Zambia is a developing country and has achieved middle-income status in 2011. Through the first decade of the 21st century, the economy of Zambia was one of the fastest-growing economies in Africa and its capital, Lusaka, the fastest-growing city in the Southern African Development Community. Zambia's economic performance has stalled in recent years due to declining copper prices, significant fiscal deficits, and energy shortages. Zambia remains one of the least developed countries in Africa, with 58% of the population living on less than $1.90 a day and an average life expectancy of 62 years. The government has succeeded in reducing the cost of doing business, but other important indicators of the business environment, such as restrictions on trade and government and judicial integrity, have deteriorated. Zambia itself is one of sub-Saharan Africa's most highly urbanized countries. About one-half of the country's 16 million people are concentrated in a few urban zones strung along the major transportation corridors, while rural areas are underpopulated. Unemployment and underemployment are serious problems. National GDP has actually doubled since independence, but due in large part to high birth rates, per capita annual incomes are currently at about two-thirds of their levels at independence. As of 2019, Zambia's GDP per capita stands at $1,305. For the first time since 1989, Zambia's economic growth reached the 6% to 7% mark needed to reduce poverty significantly. Copper output has increased steadily since 2004, due to higher copper prices and the opening of new mines. The maize harvest was again good in 2005, helping boost GDP and agricultural exports. Cooperation continues with international bodies on programs to reduce poverty, including a new lending arrangement with the IMF in the second quarter of 2004. A tighter monetary policy will help cut inflation, but Zambia still has a serious problem with high public debt. The British South Africa Company retained commercial assets and mineral rights that it acquired from a concession signed with the Litunga of Barrowsland in 1892. Only by threatening to expropriate the BSAC on the eve of independence did the incoming Zambian government manage to get the BSAC to relinquish the mineral rights. The federation's government assigned roles to each of the three territories. Southern Rhodesia was assigned the responsibility of providing managerial and administrative skills. Northern Rhodesia provided copper revenues, and Nyasaland provided the black labor. After independence, Zambia instituted a program of national development plans, under the direction of a National Commission for Development Planning. The Transitional Development Plan was followed by the first National Development Plan. These two plans, which provided for major investment in infrastructure and manufacturing, were largely implemented and were generally successful. This was not true for subsequent plans. A major switch in the structure of Zambia's economy came with the Mulangushi reforms of April 1968. The government declared its intention to acquire equity holdings. The two became the Changa Consolidated Copper Mines, the Finance and Development Corporation, to create one of the largest companies in sub-Saharan Africa, with the country's president, Kenneth Kunda, as chairman of the board. The management contracts under which day-to-day operations of the mines had been carried out by Anglo-American and RST were ended in 1973. In 1982, NCCM and RCM were merged into the giant Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines Ltd. In 1973, a massive increase in the price of oil was followed by a slump in copper prices in 1975, resulting in a diminution of export earnings. In 1973, the price of copper accounted for 95% of all export earnings. This halved in value on the world market in 1975. By 1976, Zambia had a balance of payments crisis, and rapidly became massively indebted to the International Monetary Fund. The third National Development Plan had to be abandoned as crisis management replaced long-term planning. By the mid-1980s, Zambia was one of the most indebted nations in the world relative to its gross domestic product and abided by the results. Kunda left office with the inauguration of MMD leader Frederick Chiluba as president on the 2nd of November. 1991. Zambia's economic system of government is unitary because of that the Frederick Chiluba government, which came to power after democratic multi-party elections in November 1991, was committed to extensive economic reform. Zambia's economic transformation into a free market system began toward the end of 1991 following a change of government. To tackle a serious economic crisis, the government agreed to introduce substantial economic reforms to secure much-needed loans from the World Bank and IMF. One of the greatest challenges was the privatization of the country's copper mines. Zambia's prime export earner, the government privatized many state industries, e.